Good morning. Today is September 24th, 2025, and it was a loaded day yesterday. Plenty of stories to go over this morning that happened yesterday, starting with, of course, President Donald Trump's speech at the UN, and also stories breaking by Karoline Leavitt herself, amongst other people at Fox News and in the administration even. The Secret Service now investigating potential sabotage that they believe might have occurred at the UN during Trump's visit. Some eerily weird things happened, like the escalator breaking down just seconds after Trump and Melania got on it, as well as the teleprompter mysteriously failing to operate when Trump was getting set to take the stage. I'll show you that, and then I'll go on and show all of the highlights of Trump's UN speech, where he definitely was angry about the sabotage and used it to create a 57-minute roast fest against all of the United Nations leaders, calling all of them out, making them squirm in their seats, and dropping absolute bombshell facts on all of them about immigration, globalism, global warming, and so much more. We're going to go on to cover a scandalous YouTube censorship story that broke yesterday, where YouTube flat out admitted that they banned and censored predominantly conservative channels during those peak COVID 2020 to 2022 years at the request of the Biden administration. After that, I'm going to go on and cover Kamala Harris's disastrous appearance on The View yesterday. She, of course, made a fool out of herself. And then we'll wrap up with some funny stories about women taking Tylenol. I'm going to cover all of that and a little bit more right here, right now on American Advocates. First and foremost, was President Donald Trump sabotaged during his visit to the United Nations yesterday? Did they intentionally cause the escalator to malfunction on him and the teleprompter to stop working during his speech? When I originally heard the story, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just technical errors and that it was slightly embarrassing for the United Nations to have that happen. But the story really started catching and the conspiracy theories started building. And I thought it was all funny until I saw this clip from Fox News yesterday. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt actually openly talking about it and admitting that the Secret Service is investigating it. Take a listen.
Caroline, it does appear to be sabotage with the escalator and the teleprompter. What is the White House going to do about that?
Well, Jesse, that's definitely what it appears to be to me. And that's why I put out a statement earlier. There was some concerning reporting over the weekend from the London Times, as you pointed out, that UN globalist staffers were basically plotting to set up the president of the United States. And first it was the escalator, then it was the teleprompter, and then Katie Pavlich from Town Hall, who we offered a seat in the press pool to cover the president's historic speech today, noticed that the audio inside of the room was much lower and different for the president of the United States than the previous speaker. So when you put all of this together, it doesn't look like a coincidence to me. And I know that we have people, including the United States Secret Service, who are looking into this to try to get to the bottom of it. And if we find that these were UN staffers who were purposefully trying to literally trip up the president and the first lady of the United States, well, there better be accountability for those people.
Now, it's no secret that President Donald Trump is sort of worldwide despised by a lot of world leaders because he says things the way that they are, and he uncovers all of the filth and the dirt about their countries that they don't want getting out there. He also doesn't tolerate their nonsense, where they happily hold their hands out and get on their knees and beg for American money behind closed doors, but then openly grandstand against America and our values every single chance that they get. Trump always calls them out for that. He never lets them get away with that, and that's why he's absolutely despised by some of these people. So it honestly, at the risk of sounding like a conspiracy theorist, it would not surprise me to find out that they flipped the escalator switch off when Trump stepped on it, or that the teleprompter was working until he was set to take the stage, and then, technical issues, no teleprompter. And of course, they were looking to set him up, it seems, the way Joe Biden would have handled it. Joe Biden would have fallen maybe to his death if the elevator stopped working while he was on it. Joe Biden would not have been able to tolerate that. He could barely make it up a set of regular non-moving stairs, let alone moving ones that stopped suddenly. But Trump didn't fall. And then with the teleprompter going out, former President Joe Biden wouldn't know what to do. He probably would have wandered off the stage if the teleprompter shut off. He would have probably thought in his dementia-like state that that meant the speech was over. He probably would have wandered off the stage into the woods next door and would have had to have been rescued by his handlers, because that's what we always saw him do back during his presidency. But not President Donald Trump. And the whole thing is, President Donald Trump took all of it in good humor. He made jokes about the failing escalator, saying how Melania almost fell, but it was a good thing she was in great shape. And then he made light of the teleprompter, saying whoever was responsible for that teleprompter is in big trouble. Everybody laughed, the entire room laughed, and then he would go on for 57 minutes to absolutely roast the entire room, all of their countries, all of their issues, all of their shortcomings. He was absolutely ruthless. And he started off by talking about how Christianity as a religion needs to not only be protected, but how it's also the most openly persecuted religion in the entire world.
In honor of this momentous anniversary, I hope that all countries who find inspiration in our example will join us in renewing our commitment, values, and those values, really, that we hold so dear together. Let us defend free speech and free expression. Let us protect religious liberty, including for the most persecuted religion on the planet today. It's called Christianity. And let us safeguard our sovereignty and cherish qualities that have made each of our nations so special, incredible, and extraordinary.
Not only discussing Christianity there, but yes, discussing free speech, which is the most attacked civil liberty, it would seem, currently, even sadly in America with the death of Charlie Kirk. But also, if you have access to X, the platform social media X, formerly Twitter, owned by Elon Musk, you can see blatant, horrendous examples of free speech violations occurring all over the world in what are traditionally known as Western countries and cultures. France and Europe and the UK, citizens are being arrested left and right, especially in the UK. I've seen so many alarming videos of British people literally being arrested and fined for speaking out against countries like Palestine on their social media, or for saying something that could cause anxiety to another person. That's a crime now in the UK. All you have to do is post something and have one person call the police on you and say their post gave me anxiety and offended me to my core. And you will have 2 police officers showing up to your door, arresting you, bringing you to a police station and holding you. Some of these people claiming that the police stations there hold you for 12 hours to make it as inconvenient for you as possible before releasing you and hitting you with a 4,000 pound fine? Up to that or something like that, something absurd. But another hot topic going on across the globe is, of course, immigration. We saw our own country here, America, struggle with that incredibly so. And once again, it is a magnified problem in the UK and the European Union. It's much worse out that way. And President Donald Trump would shift gears from talking about free speech and Christianity and religion, immediately diving in to how they have a massive immigration problem in the European Union, the UK, France, etc.
In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net.
Now, tying all of that in, of course, he would then go on to discuss the mayor of London and how he thinks she's a terrible mayor, and also pointing out the fact that the UK is absolutely being conquered from within by Muslims. And he would go on to tie this in with immigration, essentially stating that we need to not prohibit or allow Sharia law, or Sharia law, however you say it, to take a hold of these Western nations. We must preserve our Western nations and culture by banning Sharia law and not allowing it.
And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything, where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons. They should, in many cases, be immediately sent home.
Now, of course, the London mayor, Sadiq Khan, would immediately disavow everything President Donald Trump was saying there, claiming that he just wasn't going to spend too much time addressing such bigotry. Yes, bigotry. Bigotry, that's become one of the favorite words for not only the liberal left, but especially the overly sensitive and straight up puss boys that exist in the United Kingdom now. You know, they used to be once a great mighty empire, and they have fallen so far. They are offended by everything. It's mind-numbing to watch it happen, but they are absolutely being conquered from within. He stated, "We are not going to dignify his appalling and bigoted comments with a response." A spokesperson for London's mayor told CBS News in an email yesterday, "London is the greatest city in the world, safer than major U.S. cities." And you know, the funny thing about this is a CBS News article, and even they had to fact-check what that spokesperson for the mayor of London was saying about how it was safer than most U.S. cities. They had to throw this in there because they knew people know better than that, and they knew people were going to fact check it anyway. So, funny enough, overall recorded crime in London has increased by 31.5% over the past 10 years, with violent crime increasing by 40%, according to the UK Office for National Statistics data, cited by the CBS News partners at the BBC. Khan first took office as London's mayor in May of 2016. The UK is quickly descending into a hellhole. And look, don't take my word for it. There are reports that come out from independent journalists over in the United Kingdom and Britain. They're there giving eyewitness accounts, recording things off their cell phones even. There's all kinds of news sources, honest ones, that are independent or alternative, that are reporting on this the way it needs to be reported on. Of course, the mainstream media will never touch this. They'll never report on it the exact way that it is, especially not British news sources. But here's a reality check for everybody who's not that aware of the Muslim situation currently happening in the United Kingdom. Take a look at this.
The mayor of London is Muslim. The mayor of Birmingham is a Muslim. The mayor of Leeds is Muslim. The mayor of Blackburn is Muslim. The mayor of Sheffield is Muslim. The mayor of Oxford is a Muslim. The mayor of Luton is a Muslim. The mayor of Oldham is a Muslim. The mayor of Rochdale is a Muslim. All of this was achieved by only 4 million Muslims out of the 66 million people in England. Today in England there are over 3,000 mosques. There are over 130 Sharia courts in England, and there are more than 50 Sharia councils. 78% of Muslim women do not work and receive state support and free accommodation. 63% of Muslims do not work and receive state support and free housing. State-supported Muslim families have an average of 6 to 8 children who all receive free accommodation. Every school in the UK is required to teach about Islam. The number one most common baby name in England is Muhammad. This is not immigration. This is invasion.
There's also some more facts that I've become aware of as well, where I've heard reports that every school in the United Kingdom now is required to serve halal meat. In fact, they've gone so far to only serve halal meat. Because why wouldn't they, I guess, at that point? But those are some alarming facts right there, especially the sheer amount of Muslim mayors all inside of the United Kingdom currently. And it's true. The very fact of the matter is they only make up for about 6% of the total population there. But they have accomplished so much. They come into these countries, they invade them through legal immigration processes or illegal ones. And then they take straight advantage of the government, like you saw there with those percentages, very high percentages. What was it, 70-something% of Muslim women don't work? And close to 50%, was it, of Muslim men aren't working either, because why would they? They get to come in and get government assistance and subsidies, which, by the way, drains the resources of that government and takes away those resources from the government's actual natural-born citizens. So that in and of itself is warfare in a way. Then on top of it, they stick together strongly, bonded by their false religion, and they wind up building their mosques. And what you saw there, Sharia law courts. May we never live to see a time here in America where Sharia law courts are being built. That is horrendous. It's unimaginable. And it's always been so ironic to me that the liberals are the one that stick up for the Muslims. The Muslims' values are actually more conservative, much more conservative aligning than liberal aligning. The Muslims do not believe in LGBTQ. They don't believe in transgender surgeries. They don't believe in feminism. They don't believe in any of that stuff. And it's the liberals that defend these people and the conservatives that speak out against it, because we ultimately know that it goes way too far. The UK doesn't know that. They've fallen. They've essentially fallen. I don't see how they dig their way out of this at this point. It's going to be fascinating to watch the future of the United Kingdom, because I think it's already too late. And that's what happens when you take away free speech, you arrest people for making social media posts, and you allow the open persecution of Christianity, which should be the predominant religion in the United Kingdom. This is a country that should be predominantly white and predominantly Christian. That's just facts. But through ridiculous immigration policies overseas there, they've allowed it to become overrun with Muslims. They now have entire blocks now separated. They are Muslim-only zones. It just gets worse the more you read about it. I encourage you and implore you to do more research on this. And then look up that city, Dearborn Heights, Michigan, and see what's going on there. 52% Muslim population, according to the sources I've read. So it could already, theoretically, be starting in America, too. Now, of course, President Donald Trump would go on from there, and he would mock one of their holy grails. The globalists champion this cause. This is one of those things that it's near and dear to their hearts, global warming. Or as he accurately points out, climate change, and humorously and accurately points out why it shifted from being called global warming to being called climate change.
82, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible, as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world, but then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change, because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail.
Now tell me where he was telling lies. And of course, if you're a nutjob soy-infused liberal right now, you're losing your mind. You're typing on the keyboard as fast as possible. But we've seen the polar ice caps melt, and those polar bears up there are being devastated. I mean, the ice is melting at an inch every 10 years. And we've seen the increase in warmth. You don't understand. How dare you question the science? By the way, if that's you right now, please be sure to dislike this video. Do not subscribe to American Advocates, and never, ever come back to this channel because you make me sick. I'm practically allergic to you. But the fact of the matter is, he's spot on. Climate change has been nothing more than a con job used by globalists to essentially bankrupt nations, ruin nations' progress, ruin their industrial progress, ruin their technological advancement progress. All of it has been the most regressive con job cause in modern day human history. It's cyclical. Climate change is cyclical. Even the fact that he pointed that out, that in the 1920s, 100 years ago, they were talking about global cooling being the existential threat. We're all going to freeze to death. They thought that the ice was going to come down from the poles, cover Canada, and cover all of the northern states down to Tennessee. And Georgia was about to be the new New York in temperature, and Florida was going to be frigid, and the alligators were going to die. I'm sure it was all over the news at that point. That's what they thought. And then boom, the natural cyclical climate started heating back up. And then by the time, like he said, in the 1980s, if we don't do something about this global warming, 1989, it'll be like a nuclear holocaust. Entire nations are going to melt. 1989 comes and passes, nothing. They predicted by 1999 that global warming was going to ruin us. 1999 came and went, nothing. Then you have that moron, Greta Thunberg. She looks perpetually 14 for some reason. She's like stuck as a child. I don't know how. Every time I see her, though, it's just like her hair's getting gray, but she somehow looks like a child. And by the way, why were they ever listening to somebody like that? A child. I remember when she gave speeches to these morons, they all thunderously applauded. But there was supposed to be this, if we don't do this in the next 12 years, we're done. And then you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with her Green New Scam, the way President Donald Trump would call it. Another liberal scam. It's all been a scam, all of it. And I love that he just stood up there and called them all out because they all participate in this scam, all of them, except for the leaders that aren't there, like, China and India, who actually care about their nation's productivity and are actually doing stuff, or at least trying to do stuff to increase their GDP, their productivity, their technological advancements. And that's another whole point in and of itself, by the way. The very fact that India and China literally don't give a shit about global warming, if it was ever a thing to begin with to be concerned about, and we do, means that we'll never achieve the net zero that idiots like Mark Carney and the rest of them want, because there's China and India pumping smog into the air every single day. Hong Kong is like the most polluted city in the world, and Hong Kong easily makes up for any of the cleanest cities that we can ever hope to accomplish here in the West anyway. The moral of this story here is President Donald Trump roasted all of these people for 57 glorious minutes. I won't show you any more of the highlights. I would encourage anybody listening to this, listen to the whole speech. It's absolutely worth it. The liberals were trying to say that he sounded exhausted. He was completely lost without his teleprompter. And that is just not the case at all. He was on fire for this speech. He roasted them, and he would conclude the speech by shunning the United Nations, telling them essentially they're full of shit and they never do anything or take any appropriate action like they're supposed to. And then, of course, he would go on to tout about how incredible America is, how the UN is nothing without America, and how it's not even close. America is the hottest nation in the world right now, and all of these other countries should be jealous of us. That's my president, and I voted for that. And now for the next story. This one is scandalous. YouTube got busted by their own admission. And I'm going to actually, I think I'll use this image right here straight up as the thumbnail when I separate these out into separate videos from this large one that I'm making here. By the way, I'm turning this into a show, if you haven't realized yet. A show that'll eventually wind up being recorded live in live broadcast form. And so be sure to subscribe to American Advocates to stay up to date on that and the progress of that. For now, it's not live, but I just like this format the best. Creating a long show, publishing it early in the morning, and then breaking up the show into separate videos. But when I do break up this video into this segment, the YouTube scandal here of censorship, that'll be my thumbnail, I think, because that just fits it perfectly. It came out that, surprise, surprise, the side that is obsessed lately, only lately, with free speech, now that it's come to Jimmy Kimmel being canceled, of course, and Stephen Colbert being canceled, they've decided they care about free speech, but only lately, because during the Biden regime, we never heard any of them say anything other than freedoms come with consequences. You know, you can't just say anything you want and expect to not face consequences. And it turns out that at that time they were saying that because their president, Joe Biden, was all about censorship. In an official statement, Alphabet, who's the parent company to Google and owns YouTube, therefore, had this to say. Senior Biden administration officials, including White House officials, conducted repeated and sustained outreach to Alphabet and pressed the company regarding certain user-generated content to the COVID-19 pandemic that did not violate its policies. Emphasis on did not. While the company continued to develop and enforce its policies independently, Biden administration officials continued to press the company to remove non-violative user-generated content. As online platforms, including Alphabet, grappled with these decisions, the administration's officials, including President Biden himself, created a political atmosphere that sought to influence the actions of platforms based on their concerns regarding misinformation. It is unacceptable and wrong when any government, including the Biden administration, attempts to dictate how the company moderates content, and the company has consistently fought against those efforts on First Amendment grounds. That's YouTube admitting it. What we all suspected to begin with, of course. I myself was a victim of this on one of my personal social media accounts because I was protesting the stupidity of the face diaper mandates. I never wore, well, I did wear it for a couple of weeks, and then I realized how stupid it was, and I ripped that off my face, and I refused to put them back on. And I was harassed, and I was persecuted for it, and I openly spoke out against it, along with all of the 3-week tested, jabs that they were pushing out there that I knew better than to get. And what happened? These social media platforms forced my account to remove the video. I couldn't keep it up. They didn't even bother restricting reach. They just said, this is dangerous. You're dangerous for this opinion, and we've removed your video. It is gone forever. And then after that social media account, despite it being a personal one that I didn't care about all that much to begin with, but I had built a small following on it, it didn't get any reach anymore. I was shadow banned. All of my posts went from gaining a couple hundred likes to 10, 12, 14, 16 likes per post. And went from gaining 3, 4, 500, 600 views per post, per reel, per video, to 15, 20, 30, 50 views at most per reel, per video. I experienced it myself. And a lot of these large creators I know were going through hell during this time. YouTube outright admits to having removed entire channels. This is courtesy of Representative Jim Jordan, who posted this on X. YouTube also admits the Biden administration censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong, confirms that the Biden administration wanted Americans censored for free speech that did not violate YouTube's policies, details when YouTube began rolling back its censorship policies on political speech after Judiciary GOP began its investigation. States that public debate should never come at the expense of relying on authorities. That's true. Promises to never use third-party fact-checkers, and warns that Europe's censorship laws target American companies and threaten American speech. This is not something you're going to see reported on the mainstream liberal channels. You won't see this story on CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, or NBC. And if you do, it won't be going into these kind of details. They're going to gloss over it or ignore it altogether. That's why I'm reporting on it right here. Now, one of the good things to come out of all this, Alphabet would later go on to state, in contrast to other large platforms, YouTube has not operated a fact-checking program that identifies and compensates fact-checking partners to produce content to support moderation. YouTube has not and will not empower fact-checkers to take action on or label content across the company's services. This, of course, is good news. Nobody wants fact checkers. They've always been incredibly annoying, and we don't want them on YouTube or on any social media for that matter. However, this is the part where if you thought it was bad enough that the Biden administration, our own president, had his administration bullying these tech companies, these social media platforms to censor us and actually convince them to follow through on it, if you thought that was bad enough, this was also made in their statement, and it's very revealing about the warfare, the political warfare going on around the entire world when it comes to free speech. Take a listen to this. The committee has taken important investigative steps to highlight that obligations under laws such as the Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act may stifle innovation and restrict access to information. These laws place a disproportionate regulatory burden on American companies, and the company has long expressed its concern about the risk that the DSA may pose to freedom of expression within and outside of the European Union, depending on how certain provisions may be enforced. Yes, what we're talking about here is the EU looking to restrict their own citizens' free speech and also being upset that their citizens can see our free speech still in effect. So what are they doing about it? Well, they go on to state the DSA could be interpreted in such a way as to require Alphabet and other providers of intermediary services to remove lawful content, jeopardizing the company's ability to develop and enforce global policies that support rights to free expression and access to information. The DSA may open avenues for substantive regulation of lawful speech, including through risk mitigation, the use of codes of conduct and crisis protocols, and the out-of-court dispute settlement mechanism. Alphabet remains mindful of these risks and continues to be vigilant in its defense of these rights. And so, in summary, the European Union wants to not only censor their own citizens' free speech on social media and limit the kind of posts that they can make, but they're not happy that Americans don't have those restrictions and that their own citizens might wind up stumbling across Americans who are unrestricted, and they want to mitigate risks when it comes to that. So they're trying to find clever ways now to force these companies to remove your posts if you make a post about the UK or the European Union that the European Union doesn't like. So they're literally waging war on our free speech. This is like warfare at this point. It's like digital warfare happening. All of this being exposed, like I said, all of it coming to light under, of course, the Trump administration. And President Donald Trump is on it when it comes to preventing this from happening, which is why at the beginning of his United Nations speech, he immediately addressed free speech being one of the most important freedoms to maintain for Western society to thrive. Tell me what your thoughts and opinions are on this, though. Are you disgusted like I am about this? How on earth, the arrogance, mind you, of these European Union leaders to openly plot on how to take away our rights and our freedoms. I've spoken out against all of the immigration issues of the European Union and the UK before on X and on other platforms because I've been noticing it for 2 years now. To think that I would make a post and then have to have a platform come by and say, hey, you didn't do anything wrong. That's your freedom of speech. You're actually correct in what you're saying, but some of the politicians of the country that you're bashing on our platform didn't like what you had to say, so your post is being removed. Unacceptable. That's just my thoughts and opinions on it, though. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Now for the fun part. Kamala Harris. She's crawled out from the woodworks and appeared on The View. How do you think this went? I'll give you 5 seconds to predict how this went, actually. Because when I first heard this, I immediately thought this is going to be a disaster. And I said that with a smile in my head while I was thinking that. And I got to tell you, I'm not disappointed at all. Here's some of the highlights of that. Let's start off with this right here.
But that night, I grieved in a way that I have not since my mother died.
Wow.
And the pain was, it was not at all about losing a race. I knew what it was going to mean for the country. I was going to say for the family. And that's how I felt, for the country.
We all agree.
I knew what it was going to mean.
Yeah.
But I knew.
Yeah.
And all I could say over and over again is, my God, my God, my God.
Oh.
It was very difficult. I know many people experienced it in different ways. But.
Now, this is the next segment on The View right here. Another great one where she honestly was talking about how it was a very close election. And, you know, the liberals love using the term misinformation. So I'm going to use that against her here after I play this clip, of course, and point out the blatant misinformation that she delivers during this segment of The View. Take a listen.
Rally the night before, and I was sitting behind your husband, Doug, and Maya and your family. And I remember hugging them and them telling me, we got this. I felt so good going into Election Day. And then I read in the book that you did too. I went into Election Day thinking you were going to win.
Yeah.
So did you.
Yeah, I did.
So, I mean, it was a very tight race. But ultimately, if you have to pin it down to one thing, what was the primary reason, do you think, that you lost?
There are many factors, I think, that played into the outcome of that election. But I think probably one of the biggest in my mind is we just didn't have enough time.
You didn't have enough
time. We didn't have enough time.
Oh, yeah. Well, you didn't.
And, you know, I mean, one of the reasons I wrote the book is this is unprecedented. Think about this.
Yeah.
That there's a race for president of the United States. The current sitting president is running for re-election. 3.5 months from the election, he decides not to run. The sitting vice president then takes the mantle.
Now, I got to pause it here just to say this because it is driving me absolutely crazy. We didn't have enough time. Whose fault is that? The entire Democrat Party's fault. Because they went with moron dementia Joe Biden. And why did they do that? It's because they wanted Joe Biden to stay in office. For probably a whole host of reasons, by the way. Trump's record on defeating women is incredible, and they probably knew that. And then on top of it, they want Joe Biden in there because he was a puppet president. He was just there. They sent the guy off on a beach one time for like over 2 weeks. They just left him there. They just threw him on a beach and they said, "Here, just sit in the sand, Joe. Sleep on your chair that you can barely lift. Read a book, soak up the sun, go swimming, do nothing. We need about 14 days to use your auto pen to sign in up." Okay, I can't prove that happened, but you know damn well that's what was happening. That's why they wanted him. They were desperate to keep him in, and they were just praying that he had enough mental cognition to just do enough to beat Trump again. And then when they realized finally that he couldn't do it because he had, fallen down for the 8th time publicly, was wandering off into the woods, and then performed disastrously against President Donald Trump in that debate where he slips up and says, "We defeated Medicare." What a shit show the Democrat Party was that year, and what an even bigger shit show they are this year, which is even funnier. But for her to sit there and say, well, he decided he wasn't going to run with 3.5 months left, that's not what happened, and she knows it. They sat him down and they said, "You did your part, Joe, but you can no longer serve us, so you're finished." And then they looked at Kamala Harris and they said, well, she has her mental faculties, but she is so stupid that we might just be able to control her almost as easily as we controlled Joe. So we'll go with Kamala Harris. That's how that went. She's telling this grandiose story of it that absolutely is not the case.
Running against a former president of the United States who had been running for 10 years with 107 days until the election. And by the way, another piece of what is unprecedented and a bit historical about that race, it is the closest presidential race in the 21st century in terms of the outcome.
Wow.
You know, say that again, because he likes to say over and over again he's got a mandate.
Wrong. Not even close to accurate. There was an election that happened in the 21st century that came down to literally 537 votes out of the state of Florida. And it was absolutely not her election with President Donald Trump. Hers wasn't even close. That was the election of the year 2000. That was the closest election in the 21st century. When it comes to President Donald Trump having a mandate, according to that snobby middle-aged bitch on The View there, he has one. And why is that? Well, because as he likes to openly tout to the rest of us, he won the Electoral College, the popular vote, all 7 swing states. And on top of it, what he doesn't tell you, that is a actual fact that you can look this up and verify, every single state in America on the 2024 election shifted more conservative. Every single one, including New York and California. Look at the results from the 2020 election to the 2024 election for California and New York specifically. They're still blue. They're still blue, okay? But they are at risk. Like New York was almost at risk of being purple. New Jersey, they might lose. But New York and California are great examples. And every liberal state, I'm talking, in the 2024 election, shifted more to the right. That's how bad of a performance both she and Joe Biden put on in combination. And I got to point this out too, just to rub it in even more, because this has become a startling trend, in all honesty, of the Democrat Party. It makes me once again happy that I'm not affiliated with them at all. But she was planted. They just told their voters again, for like the 3rd election in a row, this is who you're voting for. Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, everyone. That's your president. That's going to be your Democrat candidate for president, and you will vote for her. And I just imagine what it's like to be a soy boy, puss boy, liberal man. Imagine that. Imagine being a man and being a liberal voter. What that must feel like. You don't get to watch a Democrat primary and be under any sort of illusion that your votes are going to matter and that who you want to progress out of that primary to move on towards the presidential campaign is going to matter. It's not. They don't care about you. In fact, they care so little about you as a Democrat man that they continually push for these women, these unrelatable, unfunny, obnoxious, and straight up stupid women to keep running, like Kamala Harris. Or in Hillary Clinton's case, I wouldn't call her smart because she said a lot of stupid stuff too, but she certainly was conniving and definitely evil. But once again, a woman, I'm with her. We saw the I'm with her bumper stickers all throughout 2015, and I laughed at every single one of them. How pathetic to be a Democrat man in 2025 America. And of course, when it comes to Kamala Harris, she just couldn't help herself. So she gave us a little bit of that rambling nonsense, Oprah Winfrey-esque emotional language speaking, feel-good message on The View.
That moving forward, we're going to remember that the power ultimately is with the people, and we have to remind folks that they cannot let their light and their spirit be diminished by who happens to be in the Oval Office at this moment. And that's part of what I hope to achieve with the book, is to remind us, people by the tens of thousands, for those of you who were there, came to those events with such enthusiasm and optimism and, dare I say, joy about the possibilities for our country. And that light is inside people. It's there, and it cannot be diminished or extinguished by an election or an individual. And we have to remember that. That light is inside us. And it's inside each of us, and we have to see it in each other and let that guide us through this very dark time.
Very dark times. Yes, we have seen some dark times, actually, but they haven't been President Donald Trump's fault. They've actually been liberals' fault. Most recently, again, I'll say it again, the death of Charlie Kirk. That's a dark time. And what light was inside of Tyler Robinson, a radicalized leftist lunatic, when he was aiming the barrel of his gun towards Charlie Kirk's neck and shot at him, killing him, and robbing his family of having a father and a husband for the remainder of their days? What kind of light exists within these liberal voters who then go on TikTok and Instagram to celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk in numbers that are unfathomable. I'm talking over 100,000 of them that are documented, many more of them that aren't documented, and even more of them that at least had the common sense to not openly speak and talk about their happiness of the circumstance on social media, at least. There's light inside of all of us, according to her? No. Not inside the liberals. There's no light inside of the Liberal Party, only darkness. But let's see how Kamala Harris's popularity is doing, especially after her appearance on The View. I wonder what it's like now. Is she better off now that there's been some distance between the election failure and where President Donald Trump's at? A president, once he gets voted in, typically his approval rating only does dip. So with that, does that mean that Kamala Harris's approval rating and popularity rating is going up and people are, Kamala Harris, maybe we'll vote for her in 2028? Is that the case? Harry Enton from CNN, he addresses that and covers it quite well right here with these results.
Talking about here. Well, let's take a look at her net favorable ratings nationwide. Back in October of 2024, she was at -5 points. Not exactly great, but pretty close to the zero mark, right? Pretty close to even. But now, down under she goes. She's at -13 points. That's an 8-point drop. Since the general election among the overall electorate, she is not well liked at this particular point. The American people, they don't want this. They don't want her. And get this, she's 37 points underwater with independents. If you can't win independents, you can't win the election.
Well, would you look at that? Is anybody surprised? I'm sure there's people that are surprised by that and don't believe that, but for the rest of us rational, sane ones, nobody's surprised. So I guess in conclusion with this, good luck selling your book, Kamala Harris. She's on this book tour right now. Good luck selling your book. Nobody likes you, okay? Nobody likes you. Nobody wants you to be president. Nobody wants you to be governor of California. Nobody wants you in politics. And nobody's going to read your stupid book, which I'm sure she's desperate to sell since, she managed to bankrupt her own party during her campaign and went, $20 million in debt? Yet she was on the stage telling us she had all of our financial answers. She was going to fix our economy, damn it. 20 million in debt. She needs to sell some books, and the problem is no one's going to buy them. Not a single soul. And if you're somebody who's going to buy them, please dislike this video. Do not subscribe to this channel and never come back. I don't want you here. If anything, send me her book. Sometimes I run out of toilet paper and I could use the pages from it to do what I need to do in the bathroom. But other than that, we're going to move on to the next story. One that I, of course, thought tied in quite well, actually, to just seeing that rambling, idiotic moron Kamala Harris on The View. Well, it gets worse with the liberal women voters out there on TikTok again. They never cease to disappoint us on TikTok, do they? TikTok, in the words of one of my most loyal viewers, Keystone Liberty 1776, TikTok is becoming, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he's right. It's becoming a platform that should be shopped around by psychiatrists. Essentially, you should go to school, learn psychology, psychiatry, etc., and then go on TikTok to find your clients, because there's no shortage of them. First, we saw the despicable celebrations of Charlie Kirk's death on TikTok, of course. There was hundreds of thousands of videos of them. And I got to say this, 70 to 80% of those people were liberal white women, at least from my subjective experience. And you can comment down below if you had a different experience those first few days after Charlie Kirk's death. Maybe you were seeing a lot of guys celebrating too. I certainly saw guys. I saw all these teachers, professors that were men celebrating his death too. But I got to say this, 70 to 80% of them were women. It's just what I noticed. And now we're getting a round two of that from these liberal women, again, mostly liberal white women, after President Donald Trump and RFK Jr. announced that the consumption of Tylenol while pregnant might lead to an increased chance of your child being born with autism and or ADHD. How are liberal white women responding to this news, mind you? This is how they're doing it.
about to take Tylenol for my headache while pregnant because I don't take my medical advice from a man who doesn't have a degree in science, healthcare, or medicine, and who had a parasitic brain infection and was addicted to heroin for 14 years. Yeah, I'll trust my doctors who have their degree.
Now I have a couple of things that I've thought about while watching some of these. I could play a lot more. I have like several more videos of pregnant liberal white women taking Tylenol and taking more of it on purpose just because Trump and RFK Jr. said it's bad and might not be great to do while you're pregnant and might increase the chances of your child being born with autism. I could share a lot more. If more and more of them keep coming out, I'll eventually make a compilation video of it. Why not? But my first thought process, of course, is what kind of desperate slob is knocking up these kind of women? Listen, please, men, this is the ultimate advice to you right now. If you ever stumble across a woman who looks like that, right? Avoid her. What are you doing? Like, you never allow yourself to be that desperate. On top of it, the fact that they're about to give birth to children also is deeply concerning because, well, I don't want liberal women giving birth to children. I don't want more liberals being raised in this world. But then on top of that, particularly in regards to what this broad right here was saying, how she's going to trust her doctors over RFK Jr., who, mind you, is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I don't know what goes through these moronic liberals' minds when they see RFK Jr. announcing stuff like this. This is research being done. They seem to think RFK Jr. just goes and sits in some office somewhere and thinks about crazy situations like this and makes them up and writes it down and then decrees it. It's not how it works. Like, there's actual science being executed here in the Health and Human Services Department, especially now that RFK Jr. is heading it up. So you want to trust your doctors, lady, about taking Tylenol while you're pregnant? I first and foremost just quickly want to read this statement that Tylenol made after Trump and RFK Jr. announced there might be some risks to pregnant women taking it while pregnant. Tylenol states, "We stand with science and we stand with you. For generations, families have trusted Tylenol when it matters most. Why? Because Tylenol is one of the most studied medications in history. The facts remain unchanged. Over a decade of rigorous research endorsed by leading medical professionals confirm there is no credible evidence linking acetaminophen to autism. Acetaminophen is used worldwide as a first line of defense for pain relief and fever reduction at the recommendation of independent public health and leading medical professionals and in accordance with the product label. High fevers and pain are widely recognized as potential risks to a pregnancy if left untreated, especially in the first trimester. Remember to talk to your doctor. We prioritize science as the core of how we provide care, and that will never change." But you know what's funny about all of that is this. It's not just RFK Jr., the man who that TikTok white liberal woman so elegantly said struggled with a brain worm. He's not the one actually conducting these studies, believe it or not. He's the Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department. They actually have teams that go out and study these things. This is not just RFK Jr. sitting in an office somewhere doing this, writing papers. And so it turns out that redhead lady on TikTok, liberal white woman who says, "I'll listen to my doctors." Well, here's what your doctors actually have to say, combined with the scientific community. This is an article from harvard.edu. Using acetaminophen during pregnancy may increase children's autism and ADHD risk. This article was written August 20th, 2025. When children are exposed to acetaminophen, also known by the brand name Tylenol or paracetamol, maybe I said that right, maybe I didn't, during pregnancy, they may be more likely to develop neurodevelopmental disorders, including autism and ADHD, according to a new study. And it doesn't end there. In case you're not satisfied with Harvard, here's a Johns Hopkins University article. Taking Tylenol during pregnancy associated with elevated risks for autism, ADHD. A Johns Hopkins study analyzing umbilical cord blood samples found that newborns with the highest exposure to acetaminophen were about 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD or autism spectrum disorder in childhood. Now, you'll of course have to pardon me for only reading the headlines here on this video. It's gone on long enough here. But the main point is, liberal women have been so severely affected by Trump derangement syndrome that they are now willing to risk their infant's health, their unborn infant's health, by recklessly popping Tylenol while pregnant. And some of them are only taking 1 or 2 with a glass of water on TikTok. I've seen other ones that are dumping bottles. I don't know if they're faking it. I don't know what the deal is, but that's how much they hate Trump. They're risking the health of their unborn babies just to get one off on Trump. And they look stupid doing it because they want to talk about how they don't trust RFK Jr. because where's his qualifications? Well, do you not consider Johns Hopkins University to be qualified, or Harvard? That's my question at this point. On top of that, I want to point something else out. This is something that's been on my mind, and I made this statement on Threads. You can follow me on there, American_advocates on Threads. Very liberal platform, but I have a lot of fun flaming people on there. The liberals, of course, trolling them. And you troll them easily, by the way, by speaking the truth. I pointed this out over this Tylenol thing. You tie this in with everything that we know women to be nowadays, especially liberal women, right? We're always told growing up, oh, they're the nurturing gender women. They are very good nurturers. I don't see that. I don't see that being the case. I mean, we're talking about the gender that aborts their unborn baby, right? Abortions have killed more children than any school shooting could ever hope to. That's just a fact. So women abort their children nowadays. They encourage now, these liberal women are encouraging, in some cases, their children to develop gender dysphoria and encouraging them to go on puberty blockers at the age of, 12, 13? Disrupt their hormones when it's the most crucial point of their life to have them. And then when they get old enough, they go, yeah, just get the gender confirming surgery, which means mutilate your genitalia. Now they're doing this Tylenol crap. You know, they celebrate Charlie Kirk's death. They celebrate it. His family now, with his 1-year-old and 3-year-old child, fatherless. I told you 70 to 80% of the people celebrating it I saw were women. So they celebrate that. Now they pop Tylenol and put their unborn child at risk. But they're the nurturing gender anymore? I don't think so. And so who knows what the future will hold. Tylenol is clearly very pissed about it, as they should be. Big Pharma is livid. That we saw massive amounts of pushback when RFK Jr. was having his hearings about being appointed to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and for good reason. This is why. This is a man who questions science, as you should. Tylenol wants to say that they've been one of the most studied medications in history. The facts remain unchanged over a decade of rigorous research, they say. Well, that's great. Now prepare yourself for a new decade of rigorous research. If Tylenol is safe, it'll hold up. That's how science works. It's just lost on liberals. And I can't say this enough because they have no God. Liberals don't have a religion. And so they place all of their faith in secular principles and secular ideologies and science. Science is their God, one of their gods at least. In doing so, the way that they do, where they deify science, weirdly enough, it defeats the actual purpose of science because you don't question God. And so you don't question science now because you worship science. That's their problem. That's why we're seeing this craze. That's why we're literally seeing women popping Tylenol pills while pregnant on purpose. That's going to come back to bite some of them too. It'll be interesting to see 9 months from now, some of the stories, I bet, a year from now, 2 years from now, it'll be interesting. At least 1 or 2 of them will fess up to it, I bet. And you can also bet when that happens, I'll cover it right here on American Advocates. So subscribe for more content like this. And now for the final story of the day, Antifa, once again. I didn't see any reports on Trump signing an executive order or an action declaring Antifa to be a domestic terrorist organization. I could be wrong. Developments could have happened. He could have signed it. I know he was giving a speech at the United Nations, though, and that's probably why it didn't happen yet. But I want to report on this because this story was breaking while I was recording this.
Fucking be here with your fucking iPhone.
Now, you'll hear the argument all over social media from liberals when it comes to Trump declaring them a domestic terrorist organization, that Antifa is not an organization. They always are continually saying, if they're an organization, name their leader. How are they an organization? Don't you know what Antifa stands for? It stands for anti-fascism. It's just an idea, as if an idea can't also be an organization. Something I've always pointed out, they're organized. They have symbols, they have logos, they have flags. I mean, take a look at this. That's an Antifa flag right there. With the guy who seems to be in the universal Antifa dress code. They look like pathetic little street ninjas that bought their costumes at a Halloween Spirits pop-up store and all emerged unanimously out of their mom's basements at the same time of day to go out into the streets and wreak havoc. But yet they're not an organization. Tyler Robinson, the Charlie Kirk assassin, reportedly frequently visited Discord Antifa servers. In fact, visited the same ones, reportedly, that Thomas Matthew Crooks, the Butler, PA Trump assassin, also visited. But yet they're not an organization. Something needs to be done about this. And that's why I'm ending this American Advocates episode with that footage and with this photo, because I firmly support the notion of declaring these people domestic terrorists. That way we can finally treat them the way they deserve to be treated and serve out actual justice and protect America from the true enemy from within. Thanks for watching.